This video is going to look at how we can use the properties of logarithms to simplify a logarithmic expression. And hopefully we can do this without using a calculator. We have log base 4 of 16, and we want to think of all the properties that we've learned. How can we use those to simplify this without the aid of a calculator? Well, if we have log base 4 of 16, of course, we could use the change of base formula, but again, that's going to require our calculator. But if we think about this as having a base of 4, remember our property, is there any way that we can write 16 so that it has a base of 4? Because our properties before, if we have the same base, we say that they're going to cancel each other out. So we could write this as the log base 4, and we know that 16 can be written as 4 squared because 4 squared is 16. And if you think about the properties we just talked about, what can we do with this exponent? We could pull the exponent out front, and we would end up with 2 log base 4 of 4. And remember the property that if we have log base a of a, again, if these bases match up, log base a of a, that's going to be equal to 1. So in this case, we're going to have 2 times log base 4 of 4 is simply going to be 1. So the answer is 2 times 1, or simply 2. So like log base 4 of 16 equals 2, and we can actually verify that with the calculator here. We could go to using the change of base. We would take the natural log of 16 divided by the natural log of 4, and we get an answer of 2. So that matches what we came up with here. Now again, this is to help you become familiar with the properties so that we can rewrite this without using the calculator. So don't always rely on the calculator, so make sure that you can apply these properties as well. So here we have log base 25 of the fourth root of 25. Well, notice we already have the 25 here, so how can we rewrite this fourth root? If we write it as an exponent, we could think of this as 25 to the 1/4 power. And then, just like we did before, we can take this exponent and we can pull that out front, and we would have 1/4 the log of 25, or base 25 of 25. And again, because these bases match up, we're going to be left with 1/4 times 1, which is simply 1/4. All right, now we have a natural log. We have 3 natural log of e to the 4th. Well, again, don't get confused with the natural log. Remember, this is the same thing as 3 log base e of e to the 4th. So we already have the same bases, we just need to get rid of the exponent. So we can certainly just take the exponent of 4, move that out front, and 4 times 3 we would have 12 times the natural log of e. And again, the natural log of e is going to cancel to 1, so that's 12 times 1, which equals 12. Now again, we could have simply put that in the calculator because of the natural log, but this is easy enough to perform by hand. All right, one last example. How can we manipulate these values using our properties? Log base 2 of 4 squared times 3 to the 4th. Well, we want to possibly try to write these with a base of 2. And you may notice one of the first things we may try to do here is to rewrite this with the multiplication. We can split this up into addition. So we could write log base 2 of 4 squared plus log base 2 of 3 to the 4th. And then we can notice here we have the exponent of 2. We could simply pull that out front, and we would have 2 log base 2 of 4. And we could do the same thing over here. We could pull the 4 out front, and we would have 4 log base 2 of 3. Now, if we look carefully, we have log base 2 of 4. Is there any way that we could rewrite the 4 so that we have this base of 2? Well, we could certainly write this as 2 log base 2, and 4, we could think of that as 2 squared. So now the bases match up. Now over here we have 4 log base 2 of 3. Well, unfortunately, there's really no way that we can actually write this 3 with a base of 2. So this will have to remain as 4 log base 2 of 3. But now, once again, we have the exponent of 2. We can move that out front. And 2 times 2 becomes 4 log base 2 of 2. And now that these bases match up, we know that that's going to go to 1. So 4 times 1 is 4. So we have 4 plus 4 log base 2 of 3. And that's as far as we can simplify this without using a calculator, because there's no way that we can write 3 so that we have a base of 2. The only other thing we possibly could do here is both terms here contain a 4. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this, but we could certainly factor a 4 out, and you would have 1 plus log base 2 of 3. So you could actually pull the 4 out from each one of these. So here's just a few examples of how we can use our properties of logarithms to rewrite and evaluate logs that have bases other than 10. Now, if you notice, I want to go back to this first example here. We had log base 4 of 16. We were able to rewrite this as 4 squared, but I want to show you another technique we could have used here. Log base 4 of 16. Well, we could have simply said this is log base 4, and we said, well, 16, that's the same thing as 4 times 4. And then we could say, well, this is multiplication, and we could split this into addition. So log base 4 of 4 plus log base 4 of 4. And again, because the bases here match up, log base 4 of 4 is the same, then that turns out to be 1 plus 1, which equals 2. So that's the one thing that's kind of the beauty of working math problems, and I know sometimes you think it's more confusing, but there's more than one way that we can solve a math problem. So here you could think of it as writing 16 as 4 squared using the exponent, or we could certainly think of it as 4 times 4. Either way, we end up changing our base so that it matches with the base of 4. So with a little bit of practice, I think you'll get the hang of this. So again, you need to make sure that you remember all of those different properties we talked about with logarithms. So there was a couple of videos in the past we looked at with several different properties. So make sure you understand those, because once we move on to solving equations involving logarithms, you're really going to need to understand all of these different properties. So the better you understand the properties, the easier solving the equations will be.